coming. Happy Sunday of PAX. My name is Anran. I'm going to be your host today. Welcome. Hopefully you're at the right place. This is the Career Paths into the Video Games Industry panel. First, we'll all introduce ourselves and our lovely guests. But yeah, John, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah.
Talk about your name, where you currently work at, a little brief overview of like what you do.
Yeah. I'm Junyszek. I'm the senior community manager at 343, working on Halo. It's a lot of fun. I've been there for closing in on 9 years now. October will be 9 years, which is really exciting. But as a community manager, that means I get to interact with our players. I'm writing announcements. I'm also going out there in the community on Reddit, watching YouTube videos, on Twitter, getting feedback, bringing it back to the studio, and making sure the players' voices and concerns are raised to the team and see if we can make any changes and make the game a better experience for our players.
Cool, thank you. Cristabelle?
Hi, I'm Cristabelle. I'm a senior product manager on Diablo 4, which we might be having an expansion that's coming out real soon. So it's been a really exciting time. But as a product manager, I would say I kind of work in the intersection of the commercial and the creative. So a lot of what I do in the day-to-day is work with designers, producers to kind of figure out what features to prioritize, what our roadmap should look like, and then also like getting my hands a little bit in the nitty-gritty as well, tactically, on specific features as well. So it's a really exciting time for our game and in the industry. Huge RPG fan, but if anyone has any questions about product management, I'm super happy to answer them.
Hi, everyone. My name is Renee Gittins. I am the studio head of Stumbling Cat, a studio I founded about 10 years ago. That had been mostly a side project, but a year and a half ago, I left my professional job in the games industry to do that full time and shipped my title, Potions: A Curious Tale, earlier this year. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sardelis. I'm a senior game designer on Magic the Gathering, so not a video game, but any Magic the Gathering gamers out here? Woo. Yeah, woo! Okay, cool. So that basically means I develop the card text, the mechanics, I test a bunch of draft, limited, commander, all sorts of things. Oh, I've been there about 6 years now.
Hi, everyone. My name is Victoria Caña. I'm the production director at Probably Monsters. It's a game startup studio here in Bellevue. I've been there since June. Before that, I used to work as a lead producer at Riot Games on an unannounced game and also Legends of Runeterra. And then I used to work at Wizards of the Coast on Magic the Gathering with Annie. And then on the side, I'm also an indie board game designer. So I designed a board game called Gladius and also a party game called Hot Takes.
Hot Takes. Yeah, thanks everyone. And just to introduce myself, wanted to first get to know the excellent panelists, but I'm Anran. I'm currently engineering manager at Riot Games on 2XKO. I've been there for about 2.5 years, first working in R&D and then recently on 2XKO. Previously worked with some of these fine folks, with John on Halo and then Victoria at Riot as well, and then also worked at Twitch as well. But engineering day to day, it's building the actual game. Right now for 2X, my team does a lot more of the lobbies, kind of like out-of-game experience. So if you see that, social, UI, things like that. But cool. Let's get started with our questions. I guess I'm curious. I think one of the most interesting things is always hearing how folks get into the games industry. Both from like what really inspired you to want to pursue this career, but also like how did you first break into industry and what your first role was. Yeah. So I guess I'll popcorn to anyone who wants to go first.
Annie.
All right, sure. So games were basically, I got into it because it was my hobby. And around the 2010s, it was like kind of the hot thing to like go to college for gaming. They were like, oh, cool, you can go for computer science, or you can do our games program where you also have to learn computer science, essentially. But it was a lot of fun team projects and such. And I'm sure there's still very good games programs out there. I don't know. I don't really know how that's developing, honestly, but it was rather trendy. And after that, I had about a year of being unemployed, doing a bunch of job searching. I actually taught youth tennis. You know, it's a time. When you graduate, it's a bit of a struggle, I'll be honest. It probably still is. But I landed my first job at Direwolf Digital, which is a company in Denver, Colorado. And that was because I was very drawn to card games. Like Hearthstone was the big game at the time, and I'm like, man, I cannot put this down. And there was a whole lot of like Hearthstone-like digital card games coming out, and I'm like, wait, who's making these? And so I just started digging into like, all right, this Elder Scrolls Legends game, kind of fun too. Maybe I can kind of sneak in at that company. So that's where I got my actual start, and from there I just started to looking to like, what are the big players in the card game industry? And obviously, Wizards of the Coast is like the big one. So I shot pretty high, applied there a couple times. It took like about half a year to finally get my foot in the door right. But that's how I ended up where I am now.
Let's see, I had a very unconventional path. So I've been a huge gamer my whole life, but I didn't really know I could be a game developer. Like nobody mentioned that as a potential career path. So I got my degree in mechanical engineering with a focus in biomechanical engineering and started in biotech. But my senior year of college, I realized I could be a game developer. I met other game developers and was like, I can make video games for a living? That sounds way cooler than biotech. Biotech's still cool. Turns out not many game companies want to hire biomechanical engineers to work on their games. So I had to be a little creative. I taught myself programming. I switched to the software team in biotech, and I was actually able to make some mini games for testing cognitive abilities in biotech, which is cool. And then I started volunteering my time pro bono to small indie teams, initially as a producer, so someone who helps do project management. And then I actually worked as a back-end server engineer in indie dev, and then still couldn't find any job opportunities, so I started my own studio, which is one way to do things. You could say you're in the games industry if you're just do it. Of course, that didn't pay. I was able to run a successful Kickstarter for my game, but I still worked heavily on networking and started doing lots of contracts within the games industry. I did freelance games journalism. I was the marketing coordinator for Xbox Games with Gold, and I ultimately found some specialization in technical project management, so being a technical producer. So having that engineering knowledge and as well as project management experience. Then I kept going up the career ladder until I got into executive management, eventually becoming the general manager of Phoenix Labs Vancouver, the creators of Dauntless and Fae Farm. And then I realized that's really, really far away from making games. So I left and became fully an indie dev and shipped my game.
Nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, Cristabelle, you want to go
Sure,
next?
yeah. I'm also a little more unconventional, and I'm a little later into the industry because I started off on the business side of things. So I was actually an English lit major, have always loved storytelling, grew up with games. Like ever since I was like 4 years old, there's photos of me like at my little laptop, or rather large computer, playing various games. Nintendo 64 was like that kind of girly. But of course, like post-college was like, oh, I should go into like consulting or something like that. Like, you know, what do I do with a BA in English? But increasingly over my time in consulting, I just kind of had the existential crisis of like, I don't know that I want to keep doing this. Like, there's like a call. And so certainly I went to business school, and actually during business school, had a bunch of folks reach out who were like, I kind of had a similar path of like I was in consulting and then realized like the gaming industry had kind of called to me, and they, you know, talked about their stories of porting over. So I was like, you know what, why don't I try it? So I ended up doing an internship with Activision Blizzard as part of their rotation program. And so I worked on a game called Diablo Immortal, which is the free-to-play mobile game within the Diablo universe, and was like, holy, this is awesome. Like, this is so cool to be like working in games. Like, I was kind of like mildly fangirling every day, I feel like, and was like, okay, there's, you know, I don't think I want to go back into consulting. Like, I think this is the space that I want to be in. So I ended up deciding to go over into gaming full time. I worked on Diablo Immortal actually for a bit after it launched, and then kind of moved over into D4, where I now am. So really, you know, cool to be at the literal mothership, like Hail Lilith. But it's been an awesome experience. And again, unconventional pathway to get there, but I think the gaming industry is kind of hard to break into, but once you're there, you're kind of a lifer. Like, people are very excited and thrilled to have you be part of the space and be enthusiastic about gaming. So I just feel very lucky I was able to change my class, midway through life.
I think it's nice that the games industry supports unconventional pathways, because in other industries, that's not as common.
Oh yeah, it's like great to wake up and be like, this is my job. Like, I get to work in this like really like wonderful thing that I've always been passionate about. So.
Cool. Victoria, do you want to go next?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I have I think I was similar to Cristabelle, because when I went to college, I studied media, culture, and communication. I just picked that because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I'm like, this is flexible. And, I didn't know that you could really be a game developer. There's like a game design program at NYU, and I almost took that class, but then I'm like, no, it's kind of far away. I don't know what I would do that. I would just do it for fun. And my first job was actually as a management consultant, which I was just like doing business stuff. But it was it was basically kind of boring, and I was spending all of my free time outside of work designing a board game with my now husband. And the reason that we did that is because we went to a games convention similar to this, and we went to a panel about how they made League of Legends, and one of the lead designers on League basically told us, if you want to get into games, the very first thing you should do is try making a game. And if you don't know how to program, you could try making a board game just with like cards and paper. So that's exactly what we did. We made like a bunch of prototypes. Most of them were not fun, put that in the closet, just don't tell anyone about them. But there was one board game called Gladius where when we had our friends play it, they actually wanted to play again afterwards. So I created this strategy where I thought, okay, well, it's going to be pretty hard for any of these game companies to want to hire me if I've never made a game before. So what if I just make myself credible by making my own game? And so while I was working on that board game, Gladius, and working on kickstarting it, I just got really, is our panel PG-13? I got ballsy one day, and I just at midnight, I was like, oh, Wizards of the Coast is hiring for a role that I'm not qualified for, but I'm just gonna write them a cover letter and send it on LinkedIn. And then the executive producer of Magic responded to me like a few days later, and he really liked me, but he said I needed more years of experience, but maybe I could go for another role if one opened. So that's eventually how I became a producer at Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Yeah, John?
Yeah.
Ballsy emails. Send them.
Yeah, so I got started. My first job was actually on Halo, so I've been there my entire time in the industry, which has been a really fun place to be. It's my favorite game, but I started just as a fan. About halfway through my stay at UC Irvine, I was like, 2 years, what do I want to do? I'm like, I might be able to go after this gaming thing if I put my mind to it for the next 2 years. I was like, but I'm not an engineer. I am not like super technical. I don't like programming at all. And I was like, how do I get into games? So I just started trying to see, could I go for a community management role? And I was like, all right, how do I prove that I can do that? So I started getting more active in the community. I started making YouTube videos, started streaming on Twitch, interacting on the Halo subreddit. And I really just started putting myself out there more and more, moderating on even other like forums, and just put myself out there more and more to kind of prove that I could do it. I was involved in the community. I was a positive force. And then also just being in Southern California, I was able to network with people at Halo events. All gaming events come to Southern California at some point. So got to meet the community team a couple of times, and then slowly but surely worked up that relationship, and a spot opened up right after I graduated, and tossed my hat in the ring, and sure enough, I had laid kind of the groundwork to get that path, or to get that role, and it ended up working out. Been there now 9 years. Really cool.
Nice.
Yeah, it's so interesting hearing everyone's stories, like some more conventional ones and then a lot of very unconventional ones. I'm very happy to bring you all these excellent guests. For my route, I think it's a little bit more conventional, but I studied engineering in school, computer science specifically. Always liked playing games as a kid. Same as Cristabelle, I have a picture somewhere with me with a very large, machine back in the day.
The family computers, back in the day.
One computer.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. When someone makes a phone call, your internet just breaks. Yeah. But so I always liked playing games as a kid, and my dad was a software engineer, so I was like, oh, I'll try that. And basically, the first class I took. I guess it's interesting because there's like 2 women in my class, but I didn't really notice because I think my teacher did this really cool thing where she would announce like the top scores of the class, and it was always like me and this other woman. It was very challenging at first, but like one day it clicked and I was like, oh, I just like love doing it. And we did a lot of fun like game dev type projects too, like build tic-tac-toe, things like that. So yeah, even if you don't know programming, if you want to learn it, I think doing some of those little mini projects are good. And as people have been saying, just build a game. That's kind of how you get into it. I built a lot of like side project games throughout school, but then it's also good I had that like formal technical experience. And then I actually first interned with Microsoft on OneDrive, and then they liked working with me. They wanted me to come back, but I was like, oh, I really want to work in like games or Xbox. And then they, my recruiter, since I'm already proven myself, he helped me out, floated my resume around, and luckily the Halo team wanted to look at me. So
It's a good choice.
yeah, it's a great team. So I interned there and then started full time there. And then once you get your foot in the door, it's definitely a lot easier from there. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing. So I guess actually I had a few questions. I guess Annie, you said you studied game design in school.
Yeah.
I know that's kind of like a newer major at some schools. Is that something you would recommend, or do you think what kind of skills did you learn from that?
Okay. I think like all college, it is whatever you get out of it, right? Like maybe you have a super technical field, you got to learn that stuff, or maybe you're just going there for the vibes to meet some people, find like-minded people. And I think it was kind of a split for me there, right? It was very valuable because we did get to make tangible projects. Like every year we were making like 3 or 4 small games and presenting them. And then even after graduating, the way we stayed in touch for that year where, we were all struggling to find our first jobs was by doing game jams together still. So I think that those are definitely invaluable, however you may find them, basically.
What program were you in, Annie?
What program was I
Yeah,
in?
what's-
Oh, I went to Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Albany, New York, or like Troy, New York, technically, if anyone knows it. And yeah, I studied games, simulation, arts, and sciences with another major in electronic arts. So, when we would make our teams, there'd be like the programmers who like know their stuff, and they went and worked at Google or Oracle or whatever. And then it was like me, where I'm like, okay, I'm kind of bad, to be honest. So I learned how to do 3D modeling in Maya, and like how to texture things, how to animate things, and then I would bring ideas from like the visual side of like, oh, but what if we had this new mechanic where the character kicks something? And they're like, well, if you can animate it, and I'm like, fine, I'll do it. So that's sort of where I found my niche.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Annie, yeah.
Yeah. I guess let's maybe go a little bit more in depth. Was there anything that really inspired you to want to work in games? Like, is there a certain experience, or do you just grow up playing it? Yeah.
Just tons of Halo, playing tons of Halo. It was always my favorite game. It's pretty much the only game I still play. In my entire life, it's always just been Halo. Like a little Call of Duty, other first-person shooters, but for 20 years, I've just kept playing that one game and continued to. And I was like, what if I got to work on that? What if I really tried and went for it and ended up working out?
Yeah, that's cool. You're living the dream.
So far, it's been great. Yeah.
Halo being 20 years old makes me feel really old.
Yeah, right?
I started with first-person shooters as well, but like Wolfenstein 3D. so maybe I'm showing my age there. And I loved them. I found video games really compelling, but it was actually the original Half-Life that completely changed my view of what video games could be, especially with like Wolfenstein 3D and Doom and Duke Nukem 3D. They had very like simplistic story and gameplay, and I wouldn't say they were super immersive, but suddenly like being dropped into Half-Life, like going through a cutscene list, but very story-filled like tutorial and introduction, and feeling like you're really part of the world, and that the puzzles and challenges are also part of reasonable challenges, not just like find the magic red button in the room to unlock a door. That made me completely fall in love with video games, and I think that's what eventually inspired my career path, even though it was many years later that I realized it was a potential career path.
Nice.
Oh yeah, for me, I did always love playing games. Like I would play Pokemon, Mario, Harvest Moon, like MapleStory growing up. But the thing that really drove me to get into games was there wasn't a lot of diversity, both in the types of games that were out there and also in the people who worked on those types of games. And around the time I was in college, there were a few different things happening. Like there was the Gamergate events that were happening. There were also a lot of exposés about sexism and harassment in the gaming industry. And on one hand, that could scare people away. Like that could scare women away from wanting to work in the games industry. But for me, I felt like it was a call to action to try to join the industry and help make it the type of place that I would want to work at and that I'd want other people to work at, and to also help create the types of games that I would want to see. So at a lot of the companies that I would work at, I would usually start employee resource groups for like people of color or for women, and then just like push people to have more representation in the game or hire more different types of people. And so I'm really happy to see that the industry has changed a lot, because I remember at some of the companies that I worked at, we used to eat lunch together. And I'd be like, oh, great, all 5 of us here. And now there are a lot more, so that makes me really happy.
Yeah, this panel is doing pretty well for itself in that regard. But Victoria, a lot of what you said resonates with me as well. So actually, a kind of combination of things. Like again, I grew up gaming. I've always been an RPG girly. Like grew up very much with like old school Baldur's Gate. Like I remember sitting there like playing with my cousin for hours on end, and we would like get so worked up and like shout at each other. But some of like my favorite experiences were just like being part of those worlds and being really immersed. And I think ultimately part of the reason I became an English major eventually was like I love just like the storytelling and craftsmanship that goes into games. Like some of my like favorite moments in life have been just like playing a game and just feeling those like intense core emotions, right? When you're like, you are that person, you are inhabiting them, you are making those choices, and there's just nothing quite like it, right? And I think similarly to Victoria, I definitely had a moment as well where as I got older, like more and more, like there just weren't other female gamers. Like I was almost exclusively playing in groups that was like me and like all dudes. And again, that there's nothing wrong with that. It's awesome. But I definitely had like a feeling of like, wow, like I would love to see more women count themselves as gamers too. Like, and I think with like the increase of mobile gaming, we have like a more kind of inclusive network of that. And honestly, it's awesome to like look out in the crowd and see so much diversity. Yeah, it's awesome. But certainly, like I think games are for everyone. And again, the power of gaming is being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, like truly empathize and be that other person, no matter who they are. And so like I really want to be part of a cycle of gamers that are creating games that do push the envelope in those ways that push people's emotions and allow us to like think about our experiences differently. So that's kind of the big dream for me, at least.
Awesome. Yeah, let's move on to the next question. So I guess I want to hear what your day-to-day looks like, because we have a lot of different crafts and disciplines represented, and then also if there's something about your specific like role that is unexpected from what there's a lot of just like roles, like yeah, we just want to hear like what do you actually do day-to-day? Yeah, who would like to start?
I do everything.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so the fun thing about being an indie developer is that you get to wear lots of hats, and I certainly have had people help me. I'm not particularly great with art or audio, but outside of that, I've cut my own trailers, I've written my own code, I've designed almost all of the levels and boss fights in my game. I've written this story, all 22,000 words. And right now, I'm working on porting my game to consoles, so that's half crazy back-end admin with platforms, half code. And on the other side, I'm working on an art book. And I am not a graphic designer, but I'm learning InDesign and playing with like setting things up. So one of the things that I enjoy most about being an indie game developer is if I'm feeling creative, I can work on something creative. If I'm feeling problem solving, I can work on code and something technical. If I'm feeling like social media, I can go do marketing and play around with social media. So it allows me to sort of adjust my day based on like the mood and how I'm feeling, which allows me to be what I call productive procrastination. So always doing something, pushing the ball forward, whether or not it's my top priority.
Okay. I'll talk about a day in the life of designing magic cards, I guess. Let's see. All right, so we usually have a playtest block in the morning, and sometimes you're the one leading that set. So you get in a little early, and you walk over to the printers and then do a little prayer and hope the printers don't break as you print out the set. Because we do test with actual paper cards for our game, as well as digitally on our digital teams. But it's really important that the paper cards feel right. Like, can you even read the text? Why'd you print that ability? It takes up all the dang card space. So like we do print with actual cards. Then after those play tests, we will type up our feedback before lunch. And then afterwards, there will be set meetings. So depending on what got tested on what day, usually a couple days later, you'll meet with the set team and kind of go over all of that feedback, sort of iterate on the file, be like, this cycle of 5 rares, it's lame, let's come up with something better. And so we'll do problem solving on the spot, or maybe we'll assign it out as homework, and then again, we'll meet the next day and talk about that. So it's a lot of problem solving as a team. You know, there's probably some random corporate meeting thrown in there too for like an hour, who knows. But yeah, so basically it's a very collaborative space, which I think is super fun. Like in our play test, sometimes we won't have a full draft pod of 8, which we always need to have 8 people. So you'll go like running around the office building being like, who wants to test this set? Get over here, come down to our floor. And so you get to meet new people from other, I guess, what is it? Departments, yes. And then get their perspective on the game as well, which is honestly kind of more valuable than just hearing the same feedback from the people you're gonna be arguing with later at 3 o'clock. So yeah, that's it.
Playtesting is super valuable.
Super valuable, yeah.
For me, so I'm a production director, and like what producers do varies from place to place. But at the end of the day, like I really believe the role of a producer is, to be a leader on the team. Like I see myself as like a team captain for whatever I'm working on. In this case, now it's the whole game, and I want to make sure that the game is delivered on time, to quality, within budget, and also that everybody has a good time along the way. I know that sometimes on some teams there's crunching, or like people might be unhappy at the end because it was so difficult, or various things like that. But I really believe in work-life balance and making sure that making a game is fun. Because if it's not fun, why would you work on a game, as opposed to other things? So my day-to-day really, I work on a remote team. And I also have like some development partners. So a lot of what I'm doing is it's just driving alignment, making sure we all know what is the game that we're making. Why are we making this type of game? We need to make sure that we have a feature list. We size the feature list. We know when are we going to make all of these things? Like what's our development strategy behind all of this? And I'm also responsible for making sure that other people on my team are unblocked to do various pieces of work. And one of the cool things about being a producer is depending on what type of team you work on, you might have to wear multiple hats. So there have been times on Legends of Runeterra where I'm like, okay, well, I guess I have to add the card art to the game because no one's available to do this right now, and we're trying to ship this release right now. Yeah, I think I've had to do a bunch of random things, but yeah, that's a day in my life, I suppose.
Herding cats.
Yep. Fun cats, fuzzy cats.
Good cats.
Yeah, so I'm a product manager, and the way I would describe my day is kind of split between, like, I'll call it like the strategic stuff and the tactical stuff. So the strategic stuff is a lot more of the like interfacing with the suits and like the corporate execs, being like, here's how the game is doing, right? Here's the metrics, here's like what we think is like been impactful, here's what's been less impactful, like a little more of the like, again, like big suit energy, which is still, you know, very interesting, because of course, like, for a game to be successful, like, you do need to make sure that like things are actually working, that players are excited about the features, that you're making the right features, right? So there's a little bit of just like that interfacing of like, are we making the right stuff? Kind of similar to what Victoria's talking about. Like, is this going to drive value, and is it worthwhile investing in? Because like, I think one thing that I didn't realize like until I started working in games is like, it's hard. Like, it's a lot of work, and like, you want to make players happy all the time, but sometimes like it's a really tricky exercise of like, what should we do first? Like, what's going to drive the most value? But maybe it's costly and it takes a while. Like, how do you balance those two and get things on the roadmap at the right times? And then there's interdependencies, right? So it's really kind of thinking through the like sequencing of stuff to make sure that our players are happy, because ultimately like that is what matters, right? And we want players to have fun. So that's the kind of strategic piece. And again, it's a lot of road mapping, working closely with the game director to be like, what do you think will be important? And then I would say some of it's really tactical, and that's when I get to like roll my sleeves up and like, you know, multi-class a little bit and work again with really closely with design, really closely with engineering, art, and whatnot to like decide like, oh, do we want to have more goblins in the game? Like, how do we adjust these things? Like, which feature, like, really diving into the details of specific features, like, who are the target player segments for this? Like, do they actually want this? Like, how do we optimize a little bit better? So it's really getting like quite granular into the like, how do you make this happen? How do you implement this? And the way I would describe it is like, it's almost like drawing, like, I draw the sort of square of like, here's what we think would be the most value, and then a designer would go in and like color within that, like, as much as they want, and like try to make it super creative. And I'd like to think that I have like some creativity, but of course like our designers are like phenomenal at what they do, and they're the ones that really like drive that. So it's really just making sure that like we are making the thing that we set out to do, and it's going to deliver on the promise that the players are looking for it to deliver on.
Oh, following up on something that Cristabelle said. So I know that sometimes in games there could be a negative perception to the to the suits or to the business folks, but I do want to call out that those are real jobs in games too.
Super important.
If that's for you, you can do that, because finance, strategic planning, all of that. It's really important. Whether you're an indie or if you work at a big studio. Because one reason why the games industry is having a difficult time right now is because the cost of developing games has become so high, and also the market is very saturated, and it costs a lot of money to market your game, to get them to to play your game and to buy your game. So I think that if you want to do that, that's an option. But also, if you're in another discipline, it could still be good to know about like the business side of games, because in order to have like a long and healthy career in games, you have to make strategic choices. Like, as a designer or an engineer, should we really build this feature? Like, is the ROI there? Should we be spending this time? It's like a lot of decision making in that sense.
Yeah, Victoria raises a really good point. Like, I think both sides of the equation are absolutely fundamental, and like when they are working together in concert, that's when it really sings, right? Because then you're doing the things that the players want, and you're doing it in a way that's sustainable for the business. So like, it's a real privilege to, I think, be able to like straddle both worlds and understand how they function together, because ultimately what you don't want to happen is like make a game that's like amazing for players, but unfortunately like doesn't sustain itself, and then you get these like really sad situations where things shut down, right? So like, ideally you're able to make a really, really strong business and like and do that in a way that's sustainable for the people working there, but also one that, of course, players really value and appreciate.
One of the things I think is really beautiful about gaming is it's almost any major you can have, you can probably do something in the games industry with it. Of course, yeah, there's lawyers and business people and marketers, but One of my friends is the creator of Universe Sandbox 2, and he hires scientists, astrophysicists to help figure out like making the physics of that game correct. People hire historians so that they are, when they're making historical games, they're like being respectful to history, and all sorts of other roles. Obviously, writers and artists and programmers, but there are so many people whose creative and technical and deep knowledge can be contributed into all sorts of different games.
Yeah, John?
Oh, yeah. Are we doing day-to-day still?
day-to-day.
Okay. Oh, I just want to make sure I'm
exercise.
on the same page. Okay. Yeah, day-to-day for a community manager is pretty fun. You get to jump out into the wild west that is the internet. Wake up, check Reddit. That's always good. I say it jokingly, but I do love the Halo subreddit. There's a little bit of something for everyone. That's why I started going there so much when I was a fan. But you want to jump on, you check online, make sure nothing's going wrong, right? Are the servers down? Do I need to immediately send off an incident so Anran's team can go fix it, and get everyone back in playing? Check Twitter, and just really make sure nothing is on fire to start the day. And then you actually get to your meetings where you can dive in. Obviously, we've got some play tests that I always try and make sure I'm jumping into, being a part of, kind of representing what our players would probably say, right? Trying to anticipate player expectations, right? Halo's got a lot of history there. Since I've been playing for a long time, I know a lot of that history. And some people might say it's baggage. I think it just gives people a lot of expectations, right? And we need to meet those expectations with features, with gameplay, loops, and stuff like that. And then aside from playtests and checking online, there is a lot of meetings with specific teams or team leads on their features, right? So I'm going to talk about progression with the progression team. Here's what our players are saying about this. The grind is too long. This part isn't fun or rewarding. We talk with the sandbox team about this weapon. It's super OP right now, or you just nerfed this one and now everyone hates it. Let's go see if we could change it back. And it's like meetings with very specific teams to talk about player feedback, what we prioritize, because I know we were talking about prioritizing things, and what's going to be worth the effort for that team, and do they need to adjust any of their plans that they've already set to address that feedback, or can it slot in to their existing kind of plan and roadmap of, oh yeah, this can jump on and piggyback along and make it in the next update. So a lot of coordination with various teams across the studio.
Great, yeah, thanks. So yeah, I am an engineering manager right now, but I'll talk about first like what a day-to-day for engineer or like maybe a general creative might look like, and then also now what I do on the manager side. So generally a day-to-day, like an average day, hopefully you basically do stand-up in the morning at like 10 a.m., and then you should just get the rest of the time to do your tasks. Basically, like we'll break down work in like some amount of like sprints or milestones, like some amount of time you have to develop something. Your producer or project manager, your engineering manager should kind of hand you the tasks. We all do the talking, with community and all that to prioritize so that we just kind of give you your tasks for the sprint or at stand-up if we want to pivot you. And you just take that time that day to problem solve. So like say I might get a feature like add text chat into 2xKO. They might just kind of hand you that. Maybe your product manager will write you a brief of like what type of chat do you want? You want like one in your lobby, you want one for your duo, like you want whispers to your friends, things like that. And then it'll get handed to like a UI UX designer, maybe visual design to help kind of like create a picture of what might look like. And then you kind of figure it out. If you're more junior, you'll get someone to help you out. Well, they're like, hey, I think you can, if we don't have anything, you can maybe, baseline, use a WebSocket. Maybe there's a plugin in Unreal you can use. Oh, hey, you work at Riot, it's a big company. There's a central team that builds chat. Maybe you can use that. And then you also then kind of go splunking and code and go, how do I build this? How do we write code? in this repo. Because even though you learn that in school, every kind of company does a little bit differently, and then you figure out where in it you do that. But that's generally kind of like your day-to-day, actually just building the thing. Once it's done, you kind of let your team know. We'll play it during the play test. There might be little bugs, or like as like a person who built it, like I'm really familiar with the flow, but someone else might be like, hey, I was expecting Enter to like be able to just automatically open chat, because that's what I do in my other games, and then we'll be like, oh, that's a great feedback, and then we'll incorporate that. But yeah, so that's kind of like what a day-to-day for engineer looks like. For engineering manager, it's a little bit more hectic. My role was to support folks. Half of it is like a lot of that, making sure the team is successful, we hit our deadlines, we're building technology at scale and correctly. I might like look at tech design reviews, I might look at code reviews for the technical side. I might help product managers give some feedback into the game itself. Help producers with like scheduling. They might be like, hey, who's best to take up this new task that popped up, things like that. And then also a lot of people management. So usually you have like a larger team of like engineers, or if you're like an art lead or design lead, you might have like a larger team. So you want to make sure everyone feels supported. You're hiring the right skill set, because engineering, sometimes you can break it up into like very specific ones. Like you could be an audio programmer, you could be a gameplay programmer, working more on physics and all that. You could be like a UI programmer that does all the menus. I think some developers, like indie developers, can do it all, but a lot of times you end up specializing in one. So making sure you're hiring the right team and growing them as well, like looking to see where is your game going, like what type of folks do you need. I try to train folks up if they're interested into giving them opportunities into some of those other spaces, or growing in their career if they want to go kind of like up instead of like going broad. So yeah. Awesome. I think probably like the biggest question I'm sure like the audience has right now is, do you have any advice for getting into the industry? Like what are some really important things to do? Yeah.
I was actually going to kind of piggyback off the pivoting from other like industries, but you have that role like a business manager or a marketer, right? You see people come from doing that in a different industry and they've proven themselves there, and then they often will jump into games because they've wanted to do like gaming, right? They're like, I have that day job, but I love gaming. Can I bring that day job to gaming? I see that all the time across the industry, because it really shows that you have proven you can do it, and then you can use that, go to an interview and be like, I've proven it, I've got a track record of success. Let me do that and be successful for your game or your studio. And I think that goes a long way in like making that jump.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think, any career development is all about proving yourself, right? Whether that's in another industry, or maybe that's through creating your own portfolio of projects you've worked on. If you haven't heard of game jams is where you get together with other people and you make a game in a very short period of time. It's amazing for creating your initial portfolio, whether you want to be a designer or artist or engineer. Like, definitely do a game jam, because you'll get that experience. Not only will you level up, but you'll start getting those projects that you can put in your portfolio to prove that you can work with other people, you can make games, you understand the process of game development. I know that not everybody likes to hear this, but networking is also super important. I think that 70% of roles within the games industry are hired through referrals, which means that somebody at the company said, hey, this person's cool, you should maybe talk with them. Thus, it's important to go to events like PAX or GDC, or maybe your local IGDA chapter meeting. Here we also have Seattle Indies, so definitely check out those organizations. And they're great places to meet other game developers, learn from them, and also build that network that will support you through the rest of your career. Because when a job opportunity comes up and you check on LinkedIn and know that a friend works there, you can reach out to them and say, hey, I'm really interested in this role. If you could refer me, that would be really wonderful. And more often than not, they'll do that and give you a leg up there.
Yeah, I definitely want to second the game jam thing. you will just learn a whole bunch. And I also want to encourage you to not just do one, but do a few, because there's a very high chance that your first one, not unlike a D&D campaign, is just going to fall apart. Someone's going to ghost, someone's not going to be there. You're going to end up feeling like you're the kid that's just carrying the project across the finish line, and it might not be fun, but don't give up. Like, seriously, try to find your people. Invite a friend, even if they're your friend and they don't even know what the heck they're going to be doing. You can try to invent a role for them. Be like, hey, why don't you do research on this genre of game, and like come back with some opinions, right? Like, just having opinions about the work is sometimes enough to, get you inspired and just like have that person who's got your back and, will actually make it a fun experience. Because, yeah, like, why make games if it's not going to be fun, right? Oh my gosh, I've also made some really bad game jam games. It's okay. No one needs to know. So that's why you just put your best ones in your portfolio and you move on from that. But yeah, again, I think networking is good. Even if you don't know someone personally, something I really like to do, it's not creepy, trust me. Just go find people you admire in the industry, doesn't matter what role, and just start following them on stuff. Because sometimes they're gonna be like, hey, a new opening for this came up, or you can follow their journey. It's like, wow, I was following this person at their entry role, and now they're like the director at wherever, right? It's so cool to see that. I'm like, I can't believe they're doing that. That's kind of sick. And so, yeah, just, follow people on socials. It's as simple as that, honestly.
And don't be afraid to reach out to them. Like, I have had like one-off mentorship conversations with tons of people who've reached out to me on LinkedIn. Not everyone will respond, but a large amount of people will. And that's a really good way to get some personal advice and to build that network.
Yep.
Yeah, related to what Annie said about like looking up different people's backgrounds. So typically I try to approach everything by doing research and coming up with a strategy. So what I would recommend doing first is figuring out what are all of the types of jobs in the industry, or picking what you're specifically interested in, and then going on LinkedIn or Twitter and figuring out like who does this right now, and then stalking them and seeing like how did they get here, where did they go to college, what did they study, how did they make each of their leaps and all of that. And then from there, you'll start seeing different patterns emerge. Oh, some people went to a specific program and then they got an internship and then they got a job here. Or this person had this other job and they pivoted by making this side game or doing this like part-time job, for a community Discord, whatever, and they like pivoted that way. Because everybody has so many different types of backgrounds. And then once you do that analysis, you need a combination of a couple of things. One, be good at something. I feel like on these career panels, they don't talk about it that much. Like sometimes we'll talk a lot about like, here's how you can do it. But yes, the most important step is like, be good at something related to the games industry. It could be related to making games or supporting like the business around games, marketing games. Like there are a lot of different types of roles. But at the end of the day, like that is very important, that you have some foundational skills there, whether you went to a formal program or you self-taught yourself to do that in your free time. And then after that is you just have to get your first job. And I think getting the first job is always the hardest. As somebody who had a different background, when people looked at my resume, they were like, what, you're a business analyst? That doesn't make sense to work in the games industry. So I had to do all of these side projects and all of this networking and like messaging people on LinkedIn to tell them like, no, I swear, I'm not just some rando who just dropped in a resume. I really want this. And by showing them my dedication and by connecting with people, that's how you can get your foot in the door to at least have an interview and stand a chance. So I think that would be my advice.
I don't condone stalking.
I'm not stalking them. I'm researching their background, putting it in an Excel spreadsheet.
Wow, I think everyone kind of covered it, but I'll see what else I can add. Yeah, I think to the point around like trying to build expertise, like I know a lot of people, I kind of wish I'd done this, but I know people who have done it, where they've like started their own blog or something like that, where they've like analyzed games, and it's just like, again, it's like a proving function, right? It's like, I'm gonna do a deep dive into this game, which shows a couple things. It shows I'm really dedicated and interested. It shows that I understand how games work, like deconstructing a core loop or something like that demonstrates design expertise, but also like, again, like a deep understanding of how game mechanics next function. So I think there's like a lot of value in just like to build out that portfolio, right? You don't just have to be on the side of like making something. I think that's amazing too. But if that's intimidating or difficult, I think even just showing like you can break that down and like conceptualize it is also a proof of concept, right? So that could be one avenue. And then everyone's been saying this, but really it is about just like knowing folks in the industry. It is like a what's on the back of your t-shirt sort of place, which again can be really, really great once you're in it, but really intimidating if you're not yet in it, right? And so for a very long time, like I'd always thought I wanted to be in gaming, but had just like no idea how to get in. And I got really, really lucky with the like business school break and the timing of it all. And so like I'm really thankful that just like the stars aligned. But truth be told, it was really just having a bunch of critical conversations with the right people who were like, oh, this girl's passionate. She's excited about this space. Like I had a similar journey. Like let me help her out. And so I'm really lucky. Like the industry's been very good about I guess like investing in other folks who demonstrate that passion. So again, I think it's networking, as folks have mentioned, and it's like demonstration of expertise and deep understanding. And then I really want to emphasize Victoria's point as well around the like, okay, this is like my RPG showing, but like in your like skill point allocation, right? I think it can be very invaluable to have like the cross-discipline, like I have points in a couple places, but at some point like self-specialization does help, right? Like if you're a strength-based character, you're not going to go all in, right? Like it's going to scale specifically. So get some breadth and then try to find your niche.
With regards to doing blog posts and something, like as evidence, when I was doing contract work in VR, the Oculus came out, and I noted that there was a lot of harassment in virtual reality, and nobody was really talking about moderation. So I started talking about tools and ways that you can moderate virtual reality. I did a talk on it, and that talk actually got me hired at a VR company. So yeah, if you're passionate about something, if you see something, that wasn't a game, that was just me talking about potential ways to moderate in VR to prevent harassment.
Yeah, that's super awesome. Yeah, I think everyone mostly covered it, but I'll expand a little bit with a couple of stories. So definitely encourage you to do game jams, hackathons, things like that. So actually, Victoria and I used to work together, and we built a new game mode in our game that we were working on. And we are not game designers. It's a producer and an engineer. Basically, it's really nice because if you go to one of these, this was within our company, so then people are happy to help. But in general, when you go to a game jam, folks are happy to help. You just let them know, like, hey, I don't really know much about this, but I want to learn about it. So we kind of like took this another game that we really liked, and we wanted to build it in our game. We talked to some like maps and stages designers, and they basically helped us out with conceptualizing. I looked at just researched a bunch of games out there and like, how do they build maps like this? How do I translate these? And then it was really funny because I was like, Victoria learned how to use Unreal, and then we joked that we were both design interns, but she was like, I'm an intern, I'm an engineer intern. Anran told me what to do, but it was so funny because I was like, oh,
Read the error code.
yeah, read the error code.
Be afraid.
Because like engineering sometimes seems intimidating because then she like ran it, and then this error popped up, and she was like, no, and she closed it, and I was like, Victoria, you should have read it because it told you exactly what was wrong with it, like which line and exactly like what happened. Like you forgot to set this, one thing. But yeah, definitely just encourage you to kind of build a game and try it. And then as well as like networking is important, and you can go to stuff at PAX, meet people, talk to them, be genuinely interested in their jobs. I think like the networking gets a bad rep when you kind of go up to them and ask for a job. That basically never works. But if you just want to know them as a person, if you're interested in what they do, that's much better received. And then after a couple of times, like a lot of my roles actually, it was through networking. Obviously, the first one was like I interned at Microsoft. I did a good job, so they wanted to help me find another role and keep me at the company. My second was just I met some friends just around Seattle. One happened to work at Twitch, one happened to work on Pokemon Go, and those were actually the roles I ended up going for and getting positions for. And we were just engineers. I met them at like someone's house party, and I talked about like what I did on Halo, and it's like a lot of the progression, matchmaking, metagame stuff. And then one of my friends at Twitch works on like all that sort of stuff for Twitch, like subscriptions, the hype trains, things like that, where it kind of motivates you to contribute to the creator. And he's like, yeah, that's exactly what I do. And then my friend on Pokemon Go works on all the back-end services. Like we played Pokemon Go together, so that's how I knew her. She built like a lot of the, Mewtwo raids and stuff like that. Whenever I was like, broken, I was like, hey, this is broken. I sent it to her. She's like, okay. And then the next day she fixed it. But yeah.
Friends in high places.
Yeah. So definitely build connections. Like you are all big gamers, so you'll meet people in the industry and then get to know them as people. And then one day I was looking for a job and they're like, yeah, we'll refer you. So
Yeah. Networking is about making friends, not about finding job opportunities.
There is a right way to network and a wrong way to network. And I like how you said it. Meet them as people, right? Network as people, right? Don't use them as an opportunity for jobs, right? It's connect with them, understand what they do, the value they bring to the studio, learn about them as a person, and then kind of use that and learn from it, and then use it as an opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great point also that like devs are people too now. But we're all people here, all like really excited about the space, and like everyone meeting fans who are like excited about something you've done in the game is like the coolest feeling in the world, right? To be like, oh, I was really excited about this game mode that was made, and like, it's like it. I don't know, makes me really happy when that happens. So like certainly I think those moments are really fortuitous, but it does require, I think, realizing that like the people who make the games are like fans in themselves and people too, and that's where we should be approaching it from.
We're all nerds here.
All nerds, 100%.
Yeah, so we have about 5 minutes left. Probably time for one question. Not everyone will get to answer it, but is
Rapid fire.
Yeah, rapid fire. Is there anything that, like, during an interview process you would say would help people prep if they do kind of make it into the application and interview process, or what are some top things that folks have done that, like, really made them stand out?
Quickly going, do research of the company and have insightful questions prepared, either about the company specifically or about how you will be supported in your own growth at the company. It shows your investment in developing yourself and continuing to be an active contributor. Don't ever throw anybody under the bus, even if you had a really bad experience at a workplace. That is seen as a huge red flag. So always speak about even your worst situations with some grace and certainly not putting blame on anyone. Generally, the interviewer can understand where that's coming from anyway. And then soft skills are really, really important. People are very less likely to hire somebody if they think they're going to be abrasive or rude or lacking communication. I recommend reading Crucial Conversations, Tools for Talking When Stakes Are High. It's a great book, and you can get it for like $2 used, and it'll help you in your whole life, not just game development.
I guess with regards to design, one step along the way they usually get after the resume check part is a design test. I've taken quite a few design tests. I think the biggest advice I have is let your work speak for itself. Just do the test, do it to the best of your ability, ship it out, and then when they come back, that's when you have that discussion about like why you made those choices and such like that. I think it is sort of a pitfall to be like, here's the answer, and then like, here's all my work. It's paragraphs and paragraphs. I'm like, no, just save that and let your work speak for itself. So,
practice your interview ahead of time. You can look at yourself in the mirror or practice with a friend. And I'd say like while you do it, you should think about why on earth that company would want to hire you. Like that's what I always think. I'm like, okay, this is a game. What's like my positioning here? Am I like this aspiring junior person and I'm hoping they'll see my potential? Or am I like this person and I'm an expert at this particular craft? Like what's my positioning going in here? Do I want to come in confident? Do I want to come in humble? Who am I interviewing with? What does it seem like they like based off of LinkedIn and Twitter and stuff like that? And then of course like researching ahead of time. So it's really like coming prepared for the fight, so that way, once it's time, you're ready to go.
Yeah, I have a couple of things. So definitely for a couple of them, there'll be like kind of more technical or craft tests. Like for designers, they'll probably have you design some sort of game, And then for engineering, there'll be like coding challenges. Sometimes we'll have you like take home and like code a project. So definitely Those are a little bit less conventional, so maybe do some practice tests if you can find that, or get a friend to do that. And then I think something that's interesting is that, we do really want to see your passion for gaming shine through, because, there's a lot of excellent engineers at like Google, Meta, Amazon, and then sometimes they apply for Riot, and then I kind of, some of them I'm like, are you just looking for a job, or do you really love games in some sort of way? It doesn't have to even be for that specific game that you do, but I think if it is, it honestly helps a lot. Like, if you want to work on 2XKO, you're a big fighting game player, you can contribute a lot. I'm a medium fighting game player, but I also contribute because I don't know what things are, so then sometimes when people are like, do this move, do that move, I think actually, I actually gave them feedback during the internal playtest where I was like, it's too hard to like do inputs, but I played Street Fighter 6, and that was super easy to like just pick up and play at a convention. I don't know why, and then the experts are like, oh, they have modern control, so let's put that into our game. So, but thanks everyone for coming, and thanks to our great panelists once again.
Okay. Thanks for having us.
Hope you all enjoy the rest of the PAX.